fluent in Polish, and I remember you speaking in Bunjo on another podcast where you did comedy in Polish as well. Now, that's quite interesting because I want to see like how did you adjust to that, and what was the experience performing in front of a Polish-speaking audience and English-speaking audience, and how do you adjust?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I've done a little bit of an Eddie Izzard because I've done it in Polish and I've done it in French as well. Because I don't know if you know, Ariel Sumo was running some French nights. I tried
Okay.
French as well, but because I have a smattering of French. So I thought I'd sort of rise to the challenge. Yeah, I mean, Polish was my first language, right? But it's not my primary language because, of course, 99% of the time now I speak English day to day because for obvious reasons. But I didn't speak any English till I started school when I was 5. So it was probably very much my first language. And yeah, there was a guy, I don't know if you know him, called Mike Topolsky, who ran a number of nights in London, Polish comedy nights, and performed as well, obviously. And so I put myself down for it. And it was very weird, actually, because the acts at this night were all young acts from, mainly from Poland, or young Polish people, who are based here, who are performing in Polish, and it's their first language, their primary language. They speak it, pretty much perfectly, and so on. And then this old duffer comes on in his 60s, who, my Polish is old-fashioned Polish because I learned it from my parents who grew up in Poland pre-war. So it's kind of not the same kind of Polish. I mean, it's understandable. Don't get me wrong, it's not a different language, but so there's a certain quaintness to it. What I literally did was to translate most of my material into Polish. I mean, puns and wordplay don't come into it. Obviously, it's a different language, but my observational stuff, my stuff based on my experience, and I would just translate that into Polish. And what I did do was occasionally just sort of put in a little, smattering of English when I couldn't think of a Polish word, and of course, because all the audience live in England anyway, they would have understood me. So that was kind of fine. People are, again, very forgiving about that. But there was a couple of things. One was the other acts. They were all young, all talked really fast, and I could hardly understand anything from their acts because they were going so fast and talking a different form of Polish that half the time when I was watching them, I'm kind of smiling or politely laughing when I don't really know what I'm laughing at. So that was a bit weird, even though it's the same language. But the funniest thing, or the most amusing thing, was that my wife pointed out that there was a table of English people there. I think they'd come as a guest of one of the acts. And of course, they're watching all these acts talking in Polish and not really understanding very much, but, having their pints and, politely sort of watching the other acts, but not really understanding anything. So I've come up on stage and they don't realise that I'm from this country. On comes another Polish act, And I started my act in Polish, and of course, they don't understand what I'm talking about, or whatever, and I'm sort of talking in Polish. Dzień dobry, wszyscy, bardzo miło was poznać, all this kind of thing, good evening, good to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And then, a minute or two into my act, I turn to that table specifically, and I just say to them, "How you doing, lads? All right?" And they just, their faces, their jaws just dropped, and they're sort of like choking on their beer, thinking, what the hell's going on here? The guy talks English. Because they didn't realise I was actually from this country, because I'd come on talking Polish and then come out with this sort of London accent. And my wife, because she could see better than I, just said to me, it's so funny because these guys just completely in shock. But doing it in Polish, I enjoyed the challenge of it. I got laughs. And again, it's not just about, having funny material. I think it's about the engagement as well, and I think that's important in comedy. You've got to be engaging. One of the other criteria that I had for all sorts was that I would want to book nice people. You know what I mean? People who are engaging. I didn't necessarily want spiteful acts or ones that are nasty or ones that are, overly contentious. Because, people are giving up their time or, wanting to come, to have a nice time, not to be abused or to sort of find themselves embarrassed by stuff that's
Yeah.
unpleasant. And that's what I tried to do when I was on stage. So and kind of taking the mickey out of being an old Polak, really, to the Polish audience, and they seem to like it. They invited me back. So all
Lovely.
good.
And it was okay. That's an interesting point. So basically, all the slang words they used in Polish, you're like, what's this? What's this? What they're referring to this? What does this mean?
Oh yeah, there's the slang words. There's the speed at which they perform. But all of them seem to be sort of like on, the accelerator pedal down to the floor in terms of their delivery. I mean, the audience loved them. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're very funny people, clearly. But I just wasn't keeping up. I suppose is a good way of putting it. I just wasn't keeping up because I was just going so fast. And in English you have the F word. I don't know if you're aware, but in Poland there's what might be called the K word. I will say it's codified. You may have heard people say it, and just about every act was saying it every other word, and that was just over the top. Just constantly. It's a bit like an act in England, just saying fuck every other word. And that got a bit much. I wasn't offended by it. I just got bored. But that doesn't just happen on the Polish stage. I mean, if you listen to any Polish workman,